people return? How long do you think it will take?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, it's left for government and the security forces to continuously review the situation on ground to know when normalcy will be restored in the states. But I'm very optimistic that with the cooperation of indigenes of this state, these affected states, not very long, I think normalcy will be restored.
In terms of cooperation, there are those who believe that the members of the Boko Haram sect have completely infiltrated the citizenry. Do you think it will be easy to identify them? Even amongst, and how true is it that some of these vigilantes who have stepped out into the streets, the youth and the elders, how true is it that the people they are yielding as members of Boko Haram are truly members of Boko Haram and not somewhat enemies that they've had living beside them? So.
You know, we have,
are they verifiable? If that's the question I should ask.
Of course, why not? You see, you remember that the Boko Haram operation started from Yobe, but the epicenter of all the operations have been in Borno. So, like I said earlier, a lot of people were scared, you know, coming out to give information. But with this state of emergency, all hands must be on deck. It's not just the military. These operations are intelligence-driven. The intelligence agency, like the State Security Service, will provide the necessary intelligence. Locate all the operational basis of Boko Haram leaders. You've been reading in the papers, you see how they have been dislodged, and a lot of them are taken to flight. And expectedly, like people say, we see some citizens running away from the area of conflict, you know, to avoid collateral damages and effect. One would expect that under such circumstances, they will bound to expect. But so far, the report has been very favorable, and our security forces.
You know, Chamberlain asked a question earlier as to what exactly the battle is meant to achieve. Is it that you just want the insurgents to flee? You know, and how sustainable is this? Because if they're just fleeing and they leave the town, we're in there for 6 months, and after a while, we leave after 6 months or thereabouts, maybe with some presence. How sustainable is this particular strategy? Is it just for making them leave, and you know what happens after that?
No. It's not just making them to leave. You know, as operations are going on, a lot of arrests have been made, and people are being interrogated. At the end of interrogation, they could serve as leads to further arrests. Some of them, you know, the United States government, for instance, placed a ransom on the head of the Boko Haram leader. So some of these arrests could also lead to the arrest of the major leaders of Boko Haram with a view to prosecuting. It's not just making them to run away from the area, only to regroup and come back. So I think we should be sustained.
Just look a little further on that point. I mean, where they placed a bounty on one of their leaders' heads. If Nigeria had done the same thing, something similar, maybe not exact same figure, what do you think would have happened?
Well, it would have been, it would have achieved the same result, but not in the same process. You know, terrorism is a global and international war. It will not be fought by one country. So we need collaboration between other countries. You know, Western interests, especially the United States and are the major targets of these terrorist groups, apart from the ideological reasons like we are facing in Nigeria, where Boko Haram is trying to proclaim a state religion, Islam. So if federal government had, it's good that the federal government took the decision of proscribing Boko Haram than any other country doing that for us, because it would have happened.
Yeah, we'll still come to that part, but what kind of twists does that placement of bounty on its head bring to this whole fight against terrorism?
Yeah, you see, like I said, terrorism is an international war. So now, in declaring Shekau wanted, it is not left for Nigeria alone. So any country he is now must cooperate and give information to Nigeria or United States to ensure the arrest of major leaders. But I think we've got beyond that stage of negotiating, because the doors were open for the Boko Haram leaders. You know, I was a little confused when the government started taking its action. Initially, we offered amnesty, and the Boko Haram leaders say, we never asked for amnesty. It's even the government that deserves amnesty. Then you came up with setting up of the committee. You know, they all came in quick succession. You came up with the issue of setting up of a committee to look. Before then, the state of emergency was declared. So we have various options open to ensure that this matter is resolved, because it's a great security challenge.
There was a lot of excitement at that time when that bounty was praised. There was a lot of joke about it also. But take us through history, security perspective now, because it's not the first time that we're seeing a bounty being placed on the head of one who is being sought by maybe any country in the world. What has been the trend? I mean, when these bounties are declared, how are they paid? Do people volunteer, or do they produce the person? Does it eventually achieve its aim?
Well, you see, it's in intelligence, like you said. If you place a bounty, the information given should not come through the pages of newspaper that you now bring the person and say, okay, this is the person who gave us the information. But discreetly, the agents or the sources can volunteer the information and liaise with the various securities or the countries involved to say, we have information on this. At the end of which, the most important thing is to ensure that the major suspect is arrested. Who gets the bounty does not really matter.
You talked about the international community. You said that if we weren't doing things right, or the army wasn't doing things by the rule of engagement, the international community would have made some noise by now. By international community, who were you referring to?
You see, we have like in Nigeria, we have civil rights groups, people who always raise alarm, civil society groups, that once there's a casualty on the side of civilians or Boko Haram, hell is let loose. But when the security agencies are killed, nobody talks about it. As if these people have no families, they have no background. These are people's dependents.
But that is changing now.
Of course it's changing, because you have to support the security forces to ensure that we get peace.
Was it a civil rights group you were referring to as members of the international community?
United Nations, Human Rights Commission, civil rights groups. You saw what happened in Baga.
That's the reason I raised the question,
Yes.
because we know the Human Rights Watch made a lot of noise about that,
Exactly.
even showing satellite image and saying that they counted houses from there. I'm just wondering if, they had, we are now acknowledging that the information that they had was truly correct, because Nigeria has tried to counteract the information that they gave in their conferences.
I wouldn't say that the information they gave was correct, because you see, at times, some of these groups too have other interests to serve. The media, for instance, I don't want to mention some media houses. There are some people who believe that nothing good should come from Africa or Nigeria in particular. People are envious of Nigeria's status. Nigeria is a big country in Africa. So any little thing that happens will be exaggerated. And you know that terrorists, on their part, they require publicity. That's what they want. So they even go behind to sponsor some of these stories by providing images, brightly or wrongly. I'm not saying, like in Baga, there were no possibly casualties, but I feel they must have been exaggerated. But now that the rules of engagement are being observed, we don't have such an adverse report.